The crystal glasses trembled on the white, clothed table the moment the room went silent. Every fork paused in midair, every whisper died beneath the soft glow of the chandelier, and in the center of that silence stood a young waitress with trembling hands, her face burning with humiliation. Across from her, seated in silk and diamonds, the billionaire's wife had just laughed loudly enough for the entire restaurant to hear, calling her illiterate, worthless, and unfit even to carry a tray. It was the kind of cruelty that cuts deeper because it is delivered in public, wrapped in a smile sharp enough to wound. For a moment, it seemed as though the girl would lower her eyes and walk away, swallowed by shame like so many before her. But what she did next did not just silence the room. It changed every life in it forever. Before we begin this deeply emotional story, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength of the human heart, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that dignity can rise even in the darkest moments, and your support helps keep these powerful stories alive. Her name was Eliza Monroe, and at 23, life had already carved more sorrow into her heart than most people experience in a lifetime. She worked the late evening shift at one of the city's most luxurious restaurants, a place where the chandeliers sparkled like captured stars and every tablecloth was so white it seemed untouched by the world. To the wealthy guests who filled the velvet chairs each night, she was invisible, a figure in a black uniform moving quietly between tables, carrying plates worth more than her weekly salary. But beneath that neat uniform and tired smile was a young woman carrying the weight of 1,000 broken dreams. Alisa had once been the brightest student in her school, a girl who loved books so deeply that she used to read by candlelight during power outages in the small apartment she shared with her mother. Her teachers had spoken of scholarships, of universities, of a future filled with possibility. But dreams can be fragile things, easily shattered by reality. When Eliza was 17, her father died suddenly of a heart attack while working a double shift as a bus driver. The loss ripped through their home like a storm. Her mother, already struggling with a chronic illness, could no longer work. Overnight, Eliza's dreams of college were replaced by hospital bills, rent notices, and the desperate need to survive. She took whatever work she could find, cleaning offices at dawn, helping in a bakery during the afternoons, and eventually securing the evening waitress job at the prestigious restaurant called the Grand Marcellus. The irony of serving the rich while living paycheck to paycheck was never lost on her, but she wore her dignity like armor. She never complained. She simply worked. That evening, the restaurant was hosting one of its most exclusive events, the anniversary dinner of Victor Ashford, one of the city's most powerful billionaires, and his wife Helena. Their names were spoken with reverence in business magazines and whispered with envy in social circles. Victor was known as a self-made magnate, a man who had built an empire from nothing. Helena, however, was known for something else entirely: her beauty, her elegance, and her ruthless disdain for anyone she considered beneath her. Eliza had heard stories about Helena from other staff members. She was infamous for reducing waiters to tears, snapping her fingers for attention, and sending dishes back for imagined flaws. Tonight, Eliza was assigned to Helena's table. From the moment the couple arrived, tension hung in the air like static before a storm. Helena swept into the restaurant in a silver gown that shimmered beneath the chandeliers, diamonds resting at her throat like drops of frozen light. Her perfume lingered behind her like an announcement. Victor followed, quieter, older, his face lined not only with age, but with a kind of tired sadness that no wealth could conceal. Eliza approached with practiced grace, offering menus and water. Her hands were steady, but inside anxiety coiled tight. Helena barely glanced at her before making a dismissive gesture. Throughout the evening, Helena found fault in everything. The water was too cold. The bread was too warm. The wine was poured a second too late. Each criticism was delivered with the kind of smile that was more weapon than expression. Then came the moment that changed everything. Eliza was carrying the dessert tray, an arrangement of delicate chocolate soufflés and raspberry tarts crafted by the restaurant's award-winning pastry chef. As she approached the table, Helena was speaking loudly about charity work and educational foundations, performing generosity for the guests around her. At that same moment, another waiter accidentally brushed past Eliza's shoulder. One spoon slipped from the tray and clinked against a plate. It was a tiny sound, barely noticeable. But Helena seized it. She looked up slowly, her lips curling with contempt. Her voice rose just enough for the nearby tables to hear. She asked whether the girl could even read the serving order, then laughed cruelly and called her illiterate. She mocked the way Eliza held the tray and suggested that some people were simply born to serve because they lacked the mind for anything else. The word struck like a slap. A hush spread across the room. Eliza felt the heat rise to her face. For one unbearable second, the world seemed to narrow into Helena's cold smile and the sound of her own heartbeat. Years of exhaustion, sacrifice, and silent pain pressed against her chest. Then she did something no one expected. Instead of retreating, Eliza gently set the tray down. She straightened her shoulders and lifted her gaze. Her eyes were wet, but there was something stronger than tears in them. In a calm voice that carried farther than Helena's cruelty ever could, she apologized for the disturbance, then looked directly at Helena and quietly said that literacy is not measured by where someone works, but by what they carry in their heart and mind. The room froze. Helena opened her mouth stunned, but Eliza was not finished. She reached into the pocket of her apron and pulled out a worn paperback novel, its edges softened from years of use. During every short break, every quiet minute between tables, she read. Books had been her refuge, her education, and her reminder that life was larger than the walls closing in around her. She turned to a marked page and, without raising her voice, began to recite a passage from memory, a beautiful, moving reflection on dignity, resilience, and human worth. Her words flowed with such grace and depth that every guest in the room stared in silence. The passage spoke of storms that bend trees but deepen their roots, of wounds that become wisdom, and of the invisible battles every soul carries. The irony was devastating. The woman who had just called her illiterate sat speechless, while the so-called uneducated waitress spoke with the soul of a poet. Victor Ashford slowly looked up from his plate. Something in Eliza's voice had reached him in a place long untouched. When she finished, the silence in the room was absolute. Then, from somewhere near the back, a single clap sounded. It was Victor. He rose slowly to his feet, his eyes fixed on Eliza, and began to applaud. One by one, the rest of the room followed. Helena's face drained of color. But the true heart of the story had only begun. Later that evening, as the dinner came to a close, Victor asked to speak with Eliza privately in the restaurant's library lounge. She entered nervously, unsure whether she was about to be reprimanded or dismissed.